Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Eliyatambi. Right, we have this evening one of our special guests who is no stranger to our viewers, Dr. Ajantha Perera. Good evening, Dr. Ajantha.
Good
Nice to have
evening.
you
Hi,
again.
so good to be here.
Now, Dr. Ajantha, much has happened with the country, with the government, with society since you were last on the show. And we do invite you from time to time to give us your perspective and give us a little bit of sanity, perhaps, in this political process. So let's get down to something which has been the talk of the town, especially on social media, which is the behavior of MPs in Parliament. Now, much was expected of the new Parliament to keep to a professional standard because there are 159 MPs from the NPP, so they can pass anything and everything, and the opposition is relatively weak, so one expected that business would be conducted professionally and that there would not be any of this gutter talk and this back and forth insults, shouting at each other. But unfortunately, over the last few days, we have seen Parliament degenerating into something like that, and it's a little disheartening, wouldn't you say?
Well, to be very frank with you, I'm also really surprised by this whole thing because I had the feeling that the MPP were trained right at the beginning as to how they should talk, how they should conduct themselves, and and that they were trained for three long days. Now, the issue that comes up, I mean, the way I perceive it is they do not take their job seriously. They do not understand the value of their time within inside the parliament. You see, they are paid for it. They are not people who are actually in the parliament for fun. They are not there for a cricket match. They are not there for a rugby match. They are definitely not there for a, like a wrestling match. They're there to decide for the sake of the people of this country. And so every word that they say matters. You see, you can have a flow of a sentence, but it should make sense. It should have a relevance. And I do not know why they always talk about the past. I mean, somehow there seems to be always going back to the past. In those days, you were also like this. You did this. Okay, I mean, because they did that, only these people have come. If they were the very best people, a new group wouldn't have never come to the parliament. So we don't need to go back and talk about the past because the past has made a change, a decision. So I think blame game. Everybody wants to be perfect. They want to show that they are the very best inside the parliament and that they have no blames, nothing. So I have a feeling that they do not understand the value of their time, their responsibility, and why they are there. So its time has come for us to tell the people in the parliament that we are utterly disappointed with them because it's a wastage of the media coverage. And I also firmly believe that if we do not have the media in the parliament, the situation would be totally different. You see, when they see the media's presence, they want to be the key person for the day. They know that the media will definitely show it in news, whatever has happened there. So what they do is they try to get the attention, and thereby they say nasty things or they say something that will catch attention.
Now, this, of course, is something which many political parties do. Many MPs from many political parties, but we expected better from this parliament. And when I say this parliament, I mean all 225 of these MPs.
Exactly.
And after all, it's our money. We're paying
Exactly.
them.
Exactly. And they're
Um,
paid 10,000 rupees, I think, per sitting. And
Whatever it is, whether it's
yeah,
10,000 or just 100 rupees, it is their job.
exactly.
And it's not something they're supposed to do as a hobby. So they are supposed to take it seriously. And when I say it, I mean legislating. That's what it is.
And also, I think the Speaker of the House, he should put things in order. The Speaker, when he or she sits on that chair, should be able to get the hang of it. Should have that power of control. And I often, very, very often see that the Speaker seems more powerless, helpless, in a situation when the batting is going on across the person, and they seems to be the ones who are very nervous. They are worried about the time, and they are, and they're not sure as to what to do. So I believe from a parliament of this nature, we can't expect much. Because I have hardly seen any good results coming out from this parliament, because there are better arguments, there are better discussions happening outside of the parliament rather than inside of that parliament. And so I firmly, firmly believe that time has come for people to turn around and tell them, I mean, I don't know exactly, they can't be recalled because we do not have that option of recalling. So, all I can say is that the president and the prime minister, the time has come for them to talk to their people. And the opposition leader should talk to the opposition and say, we are wasting everybody's time.
I mean, this is a critical juncture in the country's history. There is so much work to be done,
Exactly.
so many issues to be debated, so many things happening in society which Parliament needs to talk about. And
Exactly.
of course, the new laws, the amendments to existing laws, all these things have to come into play. So I don't understand where they find the time to be hurling insults at each other. And I mean, there's so much. There is racism, sexism. It all seems to be there, and it's very disappointing.
Yeah, I think it's also they're not sure as to what they are supposed to achieve in the parliament. For example, at the moment we are having the discussions on the budget. Budget is so important. Budget is extremely important not only for the political party, for the government, but it is so important for the country as such, because the budget will decide as to what the priorities of the government is going to be, and also where we are heading. The whole purpose of the budget is the direction in which the country will be driven. Are we going to get out of the debt crisis, or are we going to be stuck? Are the youth going to have sufficient jobs in the country, or are the youth likely to be traveling out? Are the women going to be back home with their children, or do they have to go back to where they were before? Are the pensioners going to be useful for the country, or they are going to be just sitting around doing nothing? See, all these things are determined by the budget. That's why we discuss about a budget. That's why we say so much is allocated in the budget for such and such a thing. And to be very frank with you, I think this time the budget, I was disappointed. To be very frank with you, I would never have prepared a budget of that nature. If I were the president of Sri Lanka, my budget would have been utterly different to this
Well,
one.
this is very interesting, Dr. Ajantha, because it's been about a week now, or little longer than that, and the professionals have dissected this budget. The economists, the chambers of commerce and industry, and so on. Everyone's had their say. But I'd like to get your take on this, because you're looking at it from a humanistic point of view, aren't you?
Well, basically, for Sri Lanka right now, we need a budget which is going to develop the country. You see, it's so easy to develop Sri Lanka right now because now we are open to the outside and we need to bring investors into the country. And if you are going to bring investors into the country, we need to allocate also within inside the budget a good amount of money for the industries and for the agricultural sector and for infrastructure to some extent. You see, why I said that I don't agree with this budget is totally geared towards the next election, nothing else. Because now, for example, if you look at the social, aswasuma, the pension, the salary increase, if you really look at it, the totality of that amount comes to nearly 800 billion rupees. 800, almost 800 billion rupees are allocated for salary increase, for pension increase, and also for aswasuma. Why? But if you look at the industrial sector, how much money have they allocated for the industrial sector for its development is only about 500 million rupees. And also for export of crops and vegetables and fruits, they have allocated only about 200 million rupees. So my question is, where does the president want to take this country? He was elected with the hope of reducing corruption. We want to have the country free of corruption as much as possible and also to develop the country. He was elected to be the hope for the people. We need to understand that. Hope for the people is betterment and making sure that the country will move forwards.
So you appear to be saying that the direction of the economy and the country is not very clear in this budget.
No, because much of the emphasis is being given for social security. You see, it's so easy to please people. Sri Lankans love, for someone to come and say, I'll feed you, I'll give you this, the pensioners. Okay, it's good to increase the pension. But if you really look at it, I know I'll sound really awful when I say this, but the pensioners' contribution towards the development of the country is very little, if you really look at it. Now, even aswasuma, when you give people aswasuma, you are literally telling the people, look, I know, I feel sympathy for you, I know you are helpless, I know that you need help, and so I'm giving you aswasuma. But in Sri Lanka, people are not grateful for aswasuma. People were given Janasavya, people were given Samurdhi. What did they do for the country? Sri Lankans have done nothing for their country. They've done the minimum they can. And even the government sector. Look at the government servants. What do they do? Even if you increase their salary, say let's say we double it, still they be sitting around and chatting and gossiping about the teledramas, and they will not move a file from one desk to the other for 3 days. This is the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
So what you're saying is that it doesn't increase efficiency, certainly not in the government sector and certainly not in society, just by giving handouts. You spoke about the government sector, the government servants, and the aswasuma, and also the pensioners. Of course, one could argue that the pensioners have done a lifetime of work, and they do deserve.
It's good to be in gratitude. I'm also grateful for everyone who has been here before me, who've done their work, and therefore here I am. But in order to provide wealth for the pensioners, in order to provide wealth for those who are in need, we need to make sure that the goods and services are well provided. Goods and services, that's how we do it. Today, if the price of goods, the price of vegetables, the fruits are at a reasonable level, people can survive. They do not need to be given aswasuma, but rather if they can control the prices. Now, the price of essential goods, I was a director in the Consumer Affairs Authority, and I know that you can control the prices because there's a price formula. And if you work it out in such a way, you can control the price. I remember when I was in the Consumer Affairs Authority, we managed to control the price of milk powder. We control the price of gas. And I still remember, most of them come and we discuss with them and we look at, what the cost for the shipping and so on is. But they bring the goods ahead of time, they store it somewhere, and then when we are calculating the prices, they are saying, we want the shipping charges which have got increased, we want it included. We say, no. You have already brought the stuff to Sri Lanka and it's already in your warehouse. So why should I give you the price for shipping now? It's already been brought here at a different price. So you need to provide people with goods and services, quality goods and services. And I really want to tell the Mr. President that he should pay a lot of attention on the Consumer Affairs Authority. Consumer Affairs Authority is the authority that looks after the goods that people receive. And if you can supervise, if you can make sure that those people who are in trade, they're doing a fair job, then the people would have sufficiently good food for them to purchase in the supermarkets or in the marketplace, and if the services are good, then the people can be happy.
So your point is that the cost of living has not been looked at sufficiently.
No.
And quite apart from the cost, the standards, the quality also hasn't been taken care of.
Yeah, because you see, you go now for example, we go and buy cake from a particular shop, right? And today the price is X, but tomorrow the price is 2X. Suddenly it's gone up, and you wonder why. But then they would begin to say it's because the price of everything is going up, the transport is going up, and therefore we need to catch up with it, and therefore we've increased the price, which is a lie. But this is where the Consumer Authority needs to talk about a price index. Now we have always insisted, when I was in the Consumer Affairs Authority, we have always insisted that people put a price list in front of their shop. So even if, in the supermarket you have that, but if it is a normal shop, if the people have a price index which says this is the cost of it, people can either come and buy it or go. Competitiveness is very important in a country where the people have to take a choice. So people can decide to buy either from this shop or they can decide to buy from this shop depending on the price of goods. They should be given the choice. Competitiveness is very important. And if you look at the Consumer Affairs Act, it spells out very clearly about the competitiveness, the transparency, and how a shop should be, displaying their prices in the front, and how the expiry date should be mentioned, how the manufacturing date should be mentioned, and how now when I go to the supermarket and I want to buy a tin of sardine, and I have come across this, that's why I'm saying this. So when I see there it says 520, the other one is 675. The moment I see the 520, I think, wow, I got a good deal and I want to buy it. And the name of that particular brand is also mentioned. So I take that brand and I look at it, and then I realize, no, it's not 520. On the tin itself, it says 675. So the people who are only looking at that label would go and buy it, but by the time they go to the cashier, they suddenly get a surprise because their bill is higher than what they were expecting.
Absolutely. I know what you mean because I'm one of those annoying people who, at the end of the supermarketing, I pay and then I stand there and I go through the entire bill. Most people just take their bill and take their goods and they're gone. But I do stand there and go through the bill, and then I point out any discrepancies. Instead of going home and then putting it on social media saying, don't go to this
True,
supermarket,
true,
there are
true.
thieves, I sort it out
Some people are
immediately.
really embarrassed, because they have a whole heap of people behind them, and then people also get annoyed. So I think,
But you don't have to keep those people waiting. You can make the payment and then take your stuff and stand there.
yeah, true.
Others can keep going.
No,
So
I firmly believe today the most neglected thing in Sri Lanka is taking care of a consumer. Consumers are utterly neglected. If you go to see a doctor, last week the doctor may have only charged you 3,000 rupees, but this week he's charging you 4,500, and nobody questions. I mean, his abilities have not increased within the 7 days, and he has, most of these people have studied in Sri Lanka. I mean, why can't they provide a service too? And the doctors, just because they have a specialization, has absolute no right to increase their fee, whenever they like it. And today people are paying it with the greatest difficulty, and nobody want to die. So they go to the doctor, and then they are, we know that when they are also prescribing, we have been always telling them to prescribe something cheaper. Don't always go for the trade names which are very expensive.
absolutely, absolutely.
You need to take care of your own people. So I think these are the things that should be monitored in Sri Lanka, but nobody is monitoring them. So now the Mr. President comes and says, look, I'm going to take care of your need, so I'm going to give you 9,000 rupees or whatever, I don't know what they get, 6,000 rupees, so that you would be a happy family. Wrong. Because the moment the aswasuma is given to the people, when the president is giving with this hand, the traders, knowing that these people have got some money, will increase the price. So what's the big deal? They're going to lose anyway.
Absolutely. So the message there, and if the president is watching, and certainly the CAA directors, well, they need to focus more on consumer protection because, after all 22 million of us on this island are consumers. And now you mentioned anti-corruption, um, and that was one of the platforms on which the NPP successfully ran. They're going to stamp out corruption.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, there have been a lot of high profile arrests. Cases are proceeding. Several former ministers and members of the so-called ruling families have been indicted.
Yeah.
Some have been arrested, and the court processes must be allowed to take their course. So if they are given bail by courts, well, that's part of the process. And the cases, of course, may take months and years, but that's part of the whole justice system, which
It takes time.
well, the system needs revamping, but then we can't wait until that happens before these arrests are done.
Yeah.
But on the whole, are you happy with the anti-corruption drive, or do you feel that more could be done?
Definitely more could be done. Because today it becomes a sensation when the people see members of a certain family being taken to custody or being called to the CID, and people feel, okay, hey, we were cheated. That's dumb stuff. I mean, those are not the ways that we should be happy about, because the most important thing, we need that money. The moment the money comes, we are happy, because the whole point of bringing them into the courts is to get the money. So we need to be driving towards that, and everyone who can help to make sure that we get that money back, whichever the country it may be in, we need to get that money back, and that's what we should be doing. When it comes to anti-corruption, there's another thing that the Mr. President should think about. Basically, now, for example, I know we are digitalization. This is going well. Today, Asasuma people, the Samudhi people, whoever the recipients, maybe the pensioners, they all have the bank account numbers being taken, and now directly they are being paid, right? But anti-corruption is, we need to understand who Sri Lankans are. I mean, I'm sorry I have to talk like this, but I rather say it now than later saying, see, I mean, because Sri Lankans love to receive. Sri Lankans love to receive. It doesn't matter whether they need it, whether they deserve it, it's immaterial. To receive, yes, they are very happy about that. Now, some people have got into this habit of somehow getting this aswasuma. Some people have the habit of not only aswasuma, even everything else that the social services would provide. The danger of direct payment to a person is, we have no control over to see whether the same family, whether the same people are receiving double portions. Do you understand what I mean? The corruption goes on. The corruption goes on. We may be trying to look at the people who cheated us in the past, but we still have people who are cheating us, because development requires that we get rid of people who are cheating us. It doesn't matter whether it's a person on the roadside or a politician or a businessman. We need to make sure that we bring to the minimum that particular corruption. So the system does not show exactly who's receiving aswasuma, who's receiving any other, like maybe due to their disability they may be getting something else, their child may be getting something, the wife might be getting something. Do you know what I mean?
But Dr. Ajantha, with the impending digitalization of government, all these things can be easily checked, because at the touch of a few keys on the keyboard, you can look at, okay, in this particular village, who's living where and who's getting what. So it's very easy. You don't actually have to go there. But the problem is whether that will be done or not. There has to be someone whose job it is to make sure that these things are not duplicated.
Exactly. And this is where we need an authority. We need to establish an anti-corruption authority, especially looking at people who are receiving social services. For example, aswasma. For example, samurdhi. For example, the children getting money for their schooling, which is a fantastic thing. And then also for the disabled people. I think the government is doing a good job in providing for the people who need something. But we do not want it to go to the wrong people, because some people have got into this system, they know how to get it.
Well, that's always the crunch, isn't it? That the lack of transparency in these dealings means that the crooks are able to get their undue shares without people actually realizing what's going on. Now, over the past few weeks, we've had revelations from this government about the president's fund being misused
Exactly.
by members of parliament of many previous regimes.
Exactly.
So if the president's fund had been more transparent throughout, and every week, if you can, if they would announce, or if they would just put it on their website, so and so received 10 million rupees for this purpose, so and so received 5 million for this purpose, then it wouldn't happen because public scrutiny would be there.
Exactly. And
So
if there is an authority, if there is a group of people who have been kept, within an institution, the president can establish an institution. He could set up an institution, which the whole purpose of that institution is monitoring, just to see whether if the money is going to the right person. Because you see, there was a good thing that was happening during the Samudri thing, when the people had to go and sign and take the money. Can you
yes.
remember? This was given in temples and various places, and it was fun thing to watch how some people came in their best cars and got the Samudri, and the poorest people never received it. So now they're hiding. When the money is coming directly to their bank account, they can be hiding. But this can only be checked by an authority. And I really want to urge the president. I mean, you're doing a good job, and we are happy about it. And we are supporting you because you're looking after the people who are in need. And that's something a socialist government is expected to do. So that's fine. But there comes that little but. That but is, we need to also understand who Sri Lankans are. Sri Lankans love to receive. They will cheat to the greatest amount to get something that they want. They're very jealous if the next door neighbor gets it and they don't get it. And they will fill any amount of application forms to get what the neighbor has got. So we need to be very careful, not because just simply because this is not the best time to play around with money. We need to be very careful with every cent that we are spending, because that's why I'm saying the budget does not, Mr. President, the budget does not look like one which is truly for development. I went through the projects. All the projects that he has listed out, I have gone through them. And I see, good, there's a good infrastructure projects. But the infrastructure projects do not bring that money to us immediately. We need to think of spending money on things that's going to double our income. If we are spending 10 rupees, let 20 rupees come back to us. And that's what we should be aiming for. So the budget should be geared towards production. Production, production, and production. That's one thing that I'm happy about what the president has done, is that about how transporting vegetables and fruits, I think it's from Tambuteg, am I right? There's a station that they are going to use to transport by rail. I think that's a good idea, because we need to have good fresh vegetables and fruits coming to Colombo. I mean, we always have seen Dambulla, they're packing. I mean, the farmers, they want to make sure that they send the fruits and vegetables to Colombo. But then with the packing, and being stuck inside a lorry for hours, most of the vegetables, by the time they come to the Manning market and to the markets here in Colombo, they've gone bad, or they don't look so fresh. So people won't buy them. So having transport through the railway is a fantastic idea, and I support that 100%. I think this is something that the previous governments were also trying to do, but never got down to doing it. So it should really happen. So I think those things are pretty good. I mean, but
Well, there's a lot of progressive steps in this budget.
exactly. But I'm still, I mean, this is where I'm saying, if I were the president, it would have been a different budget, because I won't please people. I will not please the people of Sri Lanka. They don't deserve to be pleased. Sri Lankans are utterly lazy. They have done nothing for their country. They don't want to. They continue to be lethargic.
Now, that's an interesting point that you're making, because the people voted for system change.
Yeah.
In fact, they were crying out for it for 3 years, since the days of the Aragalaya, and
Exactly.
you, of course, were You were in the forefront of protesting week in, week out. You wanted change, they wanted change, and they voted for it. 62% um, during the last general election voted
Exactly.
for change, system change. But what you're saying is that our people throughout the country, they want system change, but they don't want to change.
No, they don't. They don't want to change. You see, I get a lot of people calling me and talking to me on the roadside when I'm, here and there. And most of the time, what people are saying is they're very scared to open their mouth and say something. And I do not understand that. Because I believe that as a human being, you've been given a mouth to speak anyway in the first place. You gain ears to hear and a mouth to speak, but before you speak, use your brain. That's all. And and then you need to contribute. Contribution is so important. If you do not like something, talk about it. And then we can collectively bring about a change. And this is so, so important. And I like to take this opportunity to talk about something, environmental issue that cropped up very recently. I like to give that as an example.
The environment is, of course, your
Subject.
area,
Exactly.
your bugbear, if it as
Exactly.
it were.
And about the elephants. I mean, I feel so sorry because there were 8 elephants that were killed very recently by a driver, who was the railway driver, and this person. I mean, we are looking at the situation, and we know he was at fault. His judgment was wrong. Maybe he was under liquor, we do not know, but his judgment was wrong because he was going speedily at a point where the speed was supposed to be low, because it was a sensitive area where the elephants were crossing and people knew that they were crossing that area at that particular time. So we went ahead and we said the driver should not, the services should be terminated or suspended, at least for a while, so that he learns a lesson. When a person does something wrong, even at home, when my little children were doing wrong, I gave them a little punishment because that would trigger them to do something better the next time. Punishments are not forever. Punishments are always for a while so that the person learns not to do that again. I mean, it's a simple human response to punishment. People do not want to take that action of suspending his services. You know why? They're worried about the trade unions. They're saying the moment that person's is taken away from his job for a while, the trade unions would go on strike.
But we saw this a few weeks ago, Dr. Ajantha, when the police tried to crack down on the bus drivers, the private buses, and then there was a big hue and cry, and the bus drivers threatened to go on strike,
Yeah.
and the police backed off. So who's in charge here? The mafiosa style unions, or is it the law which should
We
be
need to
followed?
take, and I think Mr. President needs to take a very firm decision. He was with the trade unions anyway. I mean, he was on the streets, right? But we need to understand development cannot happen when the trade unions decide all the time that they will fight back by going on strike. They don't have that right. You can't just go on strike for every little reason that happens. You can't do that. When there is some situation in the country which requires certain actions to be taken, right? If they are not drastic actions, if they are not going to harm anyone, then of course the government should have the liberty to take certain action. And I think right now even Mr. President is scared to send this man on leave for at least 6 months, because they are worried even in the parliament that the trade unions would call a strike. And I think time has come for us to change those things, because the reason being, when a person does something wrong, let them take that punishment and let them come back. and after having learned a lesson. So the trade unions are good people. They are looking after their people. I'm not saying they're bad people, they're good people, but they should also become part and parcel of development.
But absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you allow trade unions or other such organizations to get away with actions which they shouldn't be getting away with, then they will flex their muscles more and more, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, unfortunately, and I think politicians are very scared of trade unions. Politicians are scared of organizations because they go for votes. And I think the people in this country should also change now. You know, don't always vote for the people who look after you. Don't do that. I mean, you should vote for the people who develop the country for the sake of your children. Don't always want to get spoiled by the politicians. Think of your children. You want politicians who will develop the country for the sake of the next generation, not for you. Just because somebody gives you an asrasum, just because somebody gives you a samurti, or give you some dry rations, don't vote for them. It's stupidity in the highest. But vote if they develop the industry, if they develop the educational sector, if they develop the health sector, then vote for them because it's a common thing, and it will benefit the whole country.
Now, Dr. Ajantha, let's get to another topic which is happening right now over the last few weeks, which is violent crime. Now, Sri Lankans have got used to violent crime over the past few decades, whether it's violent crime by the state, by the police, by the terrorist organizations, and of course by these narcotics gangs. We've got used to this. And you get Chicago style killings,
I know.
executions going on, and it's the police always come out and say, well, this is gang warfare, and this guy was a gang member, and he was executed by another gang.
Exactly.
So hardly ever now do you hear of uh, what I would call proper murders,
Hmm.
which would cause a stir in society, where somebody actually who was not associated with organized crime was killed. Right. So Sri Lankans seem to be dying on the roads. In traffic accidents, and then
Yeah.
seem to be getting executed because they are related to some gang. And in fact, the police came out and said a few days ago that there are 54 or 57 gangs, I think 57 gangs, and about 1,400 gang members. So what's going on here? And again, you can't blame the government for this, all these shootings and all that.
Hmm.
It's been going on for a long time. So the government can't, suddenly wave a magic wand. But what needs to be done? What should the police be doing?
Well, I firmly believe is you see this is actually the job of the police. The police being given that job that they have to reduce the crime. They have to produce an environment where the citizens are safe, and that's the job of the police.
But do our police understand that? Because we talk about law and order. That's what our police always trot out. They say maintain law and order, but they don't talk about the safety of citizens and society. There's I think the Los Angeles Police Department. Their motto is to protect and serve.
Yep.
But our police, they always say, well, we are here to maintain law and order. So
Yeah, I
that's quite
think.
two different
Hmm,
missions, isn't it?
I have a belief that you see when this government came into power also, even I mean, during the last government, we always used to say that the politicians and all these crooks are so well connected, so they get away from it. But we wanted the system change, no? So now here we have our president here. Now, he came as a person who's going to change the system. But for the system change also to happen, the people should also. Now, people, this is their job. They need to say, we cannot go on the roadside because there is this fear. Now, for example, in the courts, the incidents that happen where a person gets killed
In Halsdorf.
Which is a very fearful thing, because we also go to the magistrate courts very often, we go to the Supreme courts very often, and none of us ever have thought about somebody coming disguised as a lawyer. I mean, now we do not know who's next
Yes, but
to us.
it's an elementary aspect of security.
Exactly.
To have metal detectors, to have recognition systems, perhaps a smart ID card or something where every Tom, Dick and Harry can't walk into the court with a gun. It shouldn't happen. I mean, I mean, Dr. Ajantha, you can't walk into a shopping mall or a hotel in Sri Lanka, especially in Colombo, without going through a metal detector, without having your bag searched. Doesn't matter whether you're dressed in a black coat as a lawyer, you still have to go through that. So why is it that they are able to get into Halsdorf without being checked? This is a complete failure, isn't it?
At the moment, now they are checking, because the very next day
closing the barn door after the horse has bolted.
Exactly. So this is the situation. But one thing I need to say,
this particular prisoner had been brought with STF guard from Busa to Colombo to Halsdorf, and then he shot in the courtroom. Nobody even tried to stop him. The man, the assailant, just kept his gun down on the floor and walked out. And he got as far as Putlam, for goodness sake.
For them to catch him. But do you remember, during the Aragalaya, there were a lot of dead bodies coming ashore on the near the beach side?
Yes, Golface.
And we were crying, because we knew they were children. I mean, they were young people from Aragalaya. And we wanted inquiries. We wanted people to come with us, so that we can call out and say, we need to recognize who these people are. We need to find who the culprits are. Aragalaya was hit several times, and it was the young people who were beaten. No one said a word about it.
Well, we certainly did at Newsfirst. We had a lot to say about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have to say that this channel really supported us, because they were the ones who were always there. But the common man did not care. The common person, the one who voted this time, where were they? They were never anywhere near that place. When the young people were killed, when the young people were beaten up, people said, Aragalaya people. They did not care when the Aragalaya people were beaten up and some were killed. They did not care. The public here in Sri Lanka, they didn't care. And it got worse and worse and worse now. Now it has come to the extent that a man can walk into a courtroom and kill someone and get into a bus and go home. It has become that bad. It can't get even worse. So what the people in this country, those who say, I am scared, I am worried, I am shy, I can't do this, you need to open your mouth and speak about it, because soon it will be at your doorstep. We never expect that, but it can come, because the situation can get worse. Today, they're not scared. They know exactly what. I mean, look at the law book, how he has fixed the gun on the law book itself.
But Dr. Ajantha, that's not something very clever. It's an elementary failure of security.
Yeah.
Because when you have large books like that, if you're walking into a secure establishment, all it takes is for a security guard to take your book and just sort of do this,
They hardly, they
but they
never
don't do
look
it.
at it.
They
They
don't
never
do
look
that.
at it. Now they have the machine. So we have to put our mobile phones, our purse, everything into it, and they check us. Now, 2 times I've gone to the Supreme Court for the Express Pearl case, and both the times I was thoroughly checked. I mean, it's such an embarrassment, how thoroughly they check you. Now, after all that has happened. So, what I'm saying is, don't wait for the worst scenario to happen. This is already very bad. And I think the public should now start to say, okay, we'll vote for you
But
in the
let's have
next
that system
election,
change.
but have the system change. Mr. President has a lot of work to do, and I'm sure he'll do his level best to get this done. But he needs to understand people are scared, people are not safe, children are not safe. Today we don't know, they can come to a mall, they can do anything and go away. And no, there won't be anybody to help. So even if we do not vote for this government, say because they have not fixed the system, even if another government comes, who knows whether they'll fix it. So people need to talk now. Don't worry about the elections. Just talk now and get this thing done. We want a safe country. This is not safe. This is extremely bad. And so the police also has the duty now. They need to be very vigilant. They need to know they should be there with the view that they are, somebody bad can walk in and somebody can damage the situation. So that should be in the back of the mind of the police. And I believe, I think this country has gone through so much. We've gone through a war, no solution. What did the war bring? Still no solution. Still we are talking about it, right? Then we had the Easter attack. No solution. Still we are talking about it. And now
a lot of talk and very little action.
Very little action.
Right.
And our people are now, they are saying, if you give me Aswasuma, I'll vote for you. If you give me Samurdhi, I'll vote for you. How could you do that? We have a country that needs changing. Don't pressurize the politicians. You do your part too. Don't just watch the show, but get into action.
Be the change.
Be the change.
Well, I'm afraid we are out of time. It's been an interesting conversation indeed. My thanks to Dr. Ajantha Perera for being with us once again.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news will come up next. Have a good evening.